Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Under the Fig Tree. I'm Troy.
And I'm Bruce.
And today we have in studio Dr. Tim and Sheryl Brewer. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And I believe what we're going to talk about is the importance of temperament in marriage. So last time Dr. Tim and Sheryl were on, I'm going to tell you now, it was the highest rated episode that we've ever had.
Sure was.
Still is.
Yep.
And you guys really helped us share with the people about the importance of marriage and having a godly marriage. And I'm excited to have you back to talk about this temperament and what that actually means. So I'm going to let you guys talk for a little while, and I'm going to learn a lot.
So am I.
Well, we're just honored to be here. You know, you two men are mentors to us, your spiritual mentors. We love you so much, and we're just honored to be here and be a part of the show.
Amen.
Awesome.
Appreciate that.
We're blessed by that.
Yeah, this is a great thing. This podcast you guys are doing, it's great. It's touches so many areas and areas that are relevant. You know,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. I think it's important is that we don't just go out and do something. You guys are doing something that's relevant. And it really helps. I think helps people grow. Individually, but spiritually helps their spiritual growth and opens their eyes to some things that they haven't thought about. You know, we got folks that bombard us with all the spiritual things in the world, but sometimes you guys look at things a little differently, and I love that because I'm one of those that when my high school teacher told me when I wrote a paper, said, you know, I always knew I was going to get a different paper from you, because if I had you write an article about a glass on a table, you were going to lay down on the floor and look at it from under and try to figure it out why it's there, you know. And so I love looking at things from a very different point of view.
That helps make you a great counselor.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
I would think so too. So I know, like, for what you guys do is so important to the body. Bruce and I, we deal with men a lot.
Yeah.
And not just men, but people in ministry a lot.
Yes.
And one of the things that we tell them is your first ministry is at home.
Yes.
And so building a successful marriage and looking at that as a ministry is so important to the kingdom, because everybody that's watching that, if the marriage is supposed to be a picture of Christ and his church,
Yes.
then building those successful marriages is key and is critical to even the generations behind us that are watching this. Mm-hmm. So they understand what a successful marriage looks like. So we do appreciate the ministry that you have.
Absolutely.
And I am very interested in learning about this temperament.
Yeah,
and,
so am I, man.
Yeah. So you guys conduct a test, is that right?
Yeah, we do what's called an APS, or Arnold Profile System Test. We've been trained in this thing for a long time, and we've done literally hundreds of profiles and over thousands of sessions, because there's usually, to do it right, it takes you at least 3 sessions to go through the profile with folks, because it has 3 areas, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, it's a clinical test, and you know, some folks go, "Oh, I can get it online." Yeah, no, it's not like a self-help thing that you can record. You know, that you can go online and do. And what's the magazine that a lot of the ladies read? You know, they have their surveys in them, you know, all that.
Cosmopolitan and such.
Yeah, such like that. It's not something you can do. And, you know, we have some folks who think, okay, let's take the test and just hand me the results. Well, if I hand you the results, you're going to look at it and go, wow, I'm a terrible person, because they don't understand
Right.
It's written clinically.
Sure.
And we have to be able to know how to interpret it and how to present it. Sheryl and I laugh sometimes when we look back at when we first started doing this years ago. We were just learning how to do it. And sometimes we would actually just read it straight from the profile, and man, it's brutal sometimes. And it's like, why would anybody want to come back for more of this? You know,
God's grace. God's grace.
But we've learned you know, by doing it and having good mentors to show us a little bit about how to do it. We've learned how to approach that, and we've learned how it works. And it's funny, we were in the middle of a session about a week ago, and something came to me in one of their profiles, and I was like, oh man, I've never thought of it this way. Let me present this. Yeah. And it was just really incredible. I'm like, thank you, Lord. You know, this is something great. And the more we use it, the more we love it, and the more we appreciate it, because it gets to the heart of things a lot quicker. You know, a lot of counselors, it'll take you a lot of sessions to get to what's really the heart of the problem.
Okay.
And this is more direct. And the thing is as we're going down the profile, it shows us your strengths. It shows us your weaknesses. I want you to live in your strengths. I want you to run your strengths.
Right.
You know, I want you to be just as confident as you can. But we look at the weaknesses and we want to build those weaknesses up, because where's the enemy going to attack us? In our weak spots. You know, if you go, you guys, both you guys are military guys, former military guys. You put your best troops at the front on the battle line, and you got your weak ones back there learning.
Right.
You know, and you're trying to bring their strengths up so that you can pull them to the front. Well, the enemy's he's gonna flank us every time and try to come after the weak ones.
Yeah, right.
And that's the way he does us. And so that's one of the great things about this is it shows us our strengths and it shows us our weaknesses too.
And before Tim explains a little bit more about temperament and we get into how it's important in marriage, the one thing that we always tell our counselees that I want to share with you guys, Jesus had every strength of all the temperaments.
Okay.
None of the weakness.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're the only ones who have the weaknesses.
Wow.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can go through the Bible and show every one of the strengths throughout the Bible. This is all biblically based. Holy Spirit led.
Yeah.
So it comes from the Lord. That's why it is so helpful and why it is so beneficial to couples.
Awesome. Well, I want to take a moment and say, you mentioned something about both of us being in the military. I was in the military, and Troy was in the Air Force. I just wanted to make that distinction.
I turned down an appointment to the Air Force Academy years ago, so I'll hold that. I'll hold that exception.
Good for you, because when you mentioned battlefield, he had no idea what you was talking about. But anyway, just wanted to make that point. So, what is temperament?
Well, temperament is basically a default way of feeling and thinking.
Okay,
that's inside of us. If you give a definition, it says it's the manner of thinking, behaving, or reacting characteristic of a specific person, their disposition.
Okay.
Okay.
And then one of the things that's talked about is that this was discovered back even in medieval times.
Okay.
Resulting in, and they talked about it resulting from dominance in one of our four humors. And that's kind of where this came. Back in 460, Hippocrates even kind of alluded to temperaments and said that we operated because of the fluids within inside us, in which fluid had dominance, caused us to operate a certain way. And so it's something that's been around for a while. Back about, I think it's back in the middle 1800s, a guy named Wilhelm Wundt.
Okay.
Nice German guy. Wilhelm Wundt. He was kind of the father of experimental psychology. Started connecting the human body with personality, and then a name that we all know, Sigmund Freud. He started playing, suggesting our behavior and our personality was driven by our innate drives and our needs and all that. And so that kind of brings us history wise kind of up to where a lot of this interest was. And then back in, I guess probably back in the 60s, a guy named Tim LaHaye, you guys
I remember Tim
LaHaye, Christian writer and everything, started really pushing the idea of temperament. And he started doing research, and he identified 4 temperaments, and he used that ancient research to kind of bring that forward.
Okay.
And it really kind of opened it up. And then some of our mentors that we just dearly love, are great people, Dr. Richard and Phyllis Arno, kind of picked this up back about 1983. He had gone and had a degree, and he was actually a pastor, and he had gone, Methodist pastor, I believe, if I remember correctly. He was a Methodist pastor, and then he started researching. He felt God was calling him to counseling. He had pastored for a lot of years, and felt God was calling him to counseling. And then somewhere in the process, the Holy Spirit came along, and he became Spirit-filled and all that. And so,
praise Jesus.
yeah, and he actually worked with with CBN for a long time.
Okay.
He was over the counseling department for CBN for a long time. But he started researching, hey, there's a better way to do this. There's got to be a better way to do this. And so he and his wife kind of went on a journey, and they did like 5,000 clients doing research on what their needs were, their wants, desires, and all that. And then he started, he had done a lot of research. He had done research at Duke and all of that, and he had done a lot of other research, and he found this model called the 5B model by Will Schutz that had done it. It's kind of a temporary, kind of a personality test that was really caught his eye. And so he felt like the Holy Spirit was saying, hey, look, this can be used. This is a tool that can be used for good. And so he started praying about it. And so he started adapting that test using that premise to be able to kind of put it all together. And so that's kind of a long version of how all that came to be. But he and his wife actually did further research because they couldn't find exactly which category she fit in.
Okay.
It didn't work.
They had a lot of disagreements with Tim LaHaye over it.
Wow.
Really?
He told Phyllis, he said, "You're a wounded sanguine." And she said, "I'm not wounded.
Wow.
That can't fit me."
Yeah.
Yeah, she said she grew up in a pastor's home. She said, I had a great life. My parents were wonderful to me. I have not had dysfunction in any way.
Right.
She's probably in the 1% of the entire population of the world, but she said it just didn't fit me. And so they came up with the fifth temperament, which we can talk about in just a little bit, but it's and so that has really opened up. And it's funny because Sheryl and I both have that temperament within us
That fifth temperament.
in one portion of us.
Okay.
And so, but it's really really fun for us. You have asked us, we're doing a session of something that we can just like go way too long on probably.
So you'll have to tell us to shut up.
Tim can get long-winded and do sidetracks and stories and all kinds of stuff. So you have
taking notes, man. Keep
you
talking.
have to kind of go, come on, Tim, pull it back in here. But anyway, it's wonderful. And if we want to look at Scripture, where a lot of it comes from, Psalms 139:14, I will praise you, for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
Yes.
Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. So when people start struggling, you talk to them about how you were made.
Yeah.
God took extreme care.
Yeah.
He wasn't afraid.
Right.
But he was fearful in the sense he wanted to make you just right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just right.
Wow.
Because when he makes you just right, he makes you for a purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so folks forget that. And wonderfully means he put wonder in you that he didn't put in somebody else.
That's right.
God has called all of us to do different things. We all have different assignments,
Yeah.
We weren't all called to be Billy Graham. We weren't all called to be, a missionary. We weren't all called to be a teacher. We weren't all called to be a pastor. We weren't all called to be an evangelist, And so he's put wonder in us. It says, marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's hidden from the rest of us. Sometimes I don't know why I do what I do. And then I have to kind of go back and look at my temperament, But my frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed. And in your book, they were all written. The days fashioned for me. The days fashioned for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey. That means I got the tools to handle the day.
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
I got the tools. And when as yet there were none of them. Anyway, throw something in.
I just want to say before, because I know we need to get into how it's important to marriage now that you kind of get a little basis. Mm-hmm. The thing I love about temperament, what is one of the things the enemy fights everybody with? Their identity.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And the temperament helps bring back who you are. Just like he was saying, who God made you to be.
Yeah.
And the enemy can use your temperament against you. which is what Tim was saying with him coming in against those weaknesses. So when you understand that, it empowers you.
Yeah. Wow. That's
and it's
awesome.
It's awesome.
Yeah, and it's so good to when you finally start understanding yourself. You go, I'm not crazy. I'm made this way. I'm not crazy, you know. And you know,
no matter what my spouse says.
Exactly. Exactly right. And you know, we were when I was working on my doctorate, we were like 7 years into our marriage when I first started studying this. And I had researched this thing to death as to which direction I wanted to go with all this. And then I found this and I was like, this looks interesting. And the more I studied, I was like, this is where we're going to go. This is where we're going to live. And when we did the testing and we started going over them together, it was like, you really feel that way? And she goes, you
He's
feel
nodding.
that way? And I'm going, yes.
For those of you who can't see that, he was nodding. Yes, I do feel that way.
And you did not hear my brains rattle. Anyway, it's we found things out about each other that we didn't know, and we did these in front of our children.
Okay.
And we also did theirs, and it was glaring. Wow. It was glaring when we did those.
Wow.
Yeah, and our son is one that he has very strong temperament characteristics in strong categories, and for him to go, yeah, that is me, is very unusual, because usually you have to pry that out of people.
Right,
but he was very open and going, yeah, that's who I am. That's exactly the way I think, you know. And so it's really cool to be able to do that. But it's a lot of for us a lot of fun. We enjoy being able to do that because we start talking. They take this little survey, and then we start interpreting and talking about the areas and everything. And I go, you got all that from those questions? Wow. How did you get all that from those questions? You know, and so, but temperament has 3 areas. When it comes back, when the report comes back, it has 3 areas, and it comes back in the area of inclusion, control, and affection. Inclusion has to do with your social energies, how you deal with people socially, and also about your intellectual, how you think. Your intellectual thinking has to do with that. The second area is the area of control. Now, when folks hear the word control, they think negatively. Automatically, our mind jumps control freak. You know, no. The area of control is how you make decisions for yourself and decisions for others.
Okay.
You know, I call it how you order your world.
Okay.
I want to be able to order my world so I know how to work within it, you know, and that kind of thing. And so that's the area of control. And then the last one is the area of affection. And that's how you give and receive love to those that are closest to you, you know, like your spouse, your children, family members, and even a small group of friends maybe that you're closest with. And depending on your temperament type will determine how many group of friends you're going to have. We'll talk about that too. Sheryl can definitely talk about that one a little bit. But those areas come back to us, and we go over those individually. You know, years ago, I heard folks talking about, hey, we go over it in one session. I'm like, there's no way. There is no way you can go over it in one session. I don't know how. I would be totally confused if I had all this information presented to me, because it deals with 3 different areas of us. And so so we break it up, and we do at least one session on each area when we work on this.
The thing about it that is great that we explain to couples, the 3 areas are important for you as a spouse, because it helps me to know how you relate socially. In other words, when a certain temperament, say a melancholy, marries a sanguine in inclusion, you're going to have struggles later on when the sanguine wants to be out and going around people all the time and melancholy wants to be home. You're going to have issues.
Oh, wow.
That's where we tell them, okay, so here's the thing. You start off, what's our game plan? We'll go to this event. We'll say X amount of time. What's comfortable for both? And then that's what you work in. But if you don't, and we've even, because I'm less of a social person than Tim, there have been times even at church. Anyway, we would be in church and he would still be stopping to talk to people. And this was before we started parking farther from church. But I would say, you know what? I'm going to go sit in the car. you're fine.
Yeah.
I'm not mad.
Yeah.
I'm just done. My social battery has been used.
Right.
And I need to be alone.
Oh, that's awesome.
I love it.
That's awesome.
And he knew that.
Yeah.
And it was fine. He could finish what he needed to do and then come meet me in the car. But if you don't know certain things about your temperament, you have the propensity for, okay, my feelings are hurt.
That's really good.
You can say you're okay, but are you really?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And I would imagine that you doing that example that you gave, now you're finishing up your business, but also you're thinking, okay, let me hurry up.
Absolutely.
Just out of courtesy.
Yeah.
Because I know she's sitting in the car waiting for me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, it kind of, it makes you more thoughtful, I would imagine, at the same time. That's really good.
Absolutely. Yeah, those traits are so important to know, because I can take care of myself, but also I can take care of her needs that she needs. Sheryl was talking about, couples sometimes, and, Miss 10 a.m. marries Mr. 10 p.m. And you got totally, you got folks. One wants to go out and have a good time and go hang with the friends, and the rest is like, let me stay home and watch a movie. I just want a nap, that kind of thing. And I'm the last one there. I do like to have friends, but I am very selective how long I spend with them.
Right.
And you're selective of who you spend time with.
Exactly.
That's also a part of your temperament.
Yeah. But one of the good things about this is it gets down below. We've all heard about personality tests, and those of you that have been in business have taken a meeting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh man, I took one a few years ago. It was 300 questions, and I was like, I don't even know what I'm writing. I've read so much, I don't even know what I'm saying. But a lot of the big ones you hear about are like Myers-Briggs or DISC. I do one in the secular world when I do businesses, because they're not open to a Christian-based thing.
Right.
Sometimes you really have to be careful with that. Even though I find ways of sliding those principles in my talks and team leading and leadership and things like that. But you have DISC is a big one that's right now. I use one called the BIRD test, which correlates to DISC a whole lot easier. And it doesn't cost $1 million to get certified in, so that's the good thing about it. And then you have Type Finder or Big Five assessment or Career Profiler. There's just so many that organizations will do. And it's funny how we were mentioning the FIRE-OB that Dr. Arno used. It's actually still pretty popular in businesses to be used because of its accurateness. Yeah. But this is the profile, the personality ones. A lot of those personality tests are in that 70th percentile. The Arno profile is in that 90th percentile. We have some of them as high as 93, 94% accurate. Wow. There are times when we have some that are just flat out spot on. And then sometimes there are just a couple of things that are not completely accurate. And that's why we go over them with them and talk to them and say, how do you feel about that?
Yeah. Wow.
And what I love about it is sometimes as we're going over the different characteristics of an area, we remind people spiritual growth can take you past your weaknesses, and life experiences can keep you in those. So sometimes we have to look at those which help bring out those different areas when we talk about the temperament, because then you can find out, is this something from your past, something that's causing you to live in this area, or you know what, I used to do that years ago, but God has set me free from that. That is not something I lean towards anymore.
Wow.
So I know, like with the personality test, you have the little buckets that everybody sits in, kind of categorizes you. It sounds like this is the same, at least in principle.
In principle, yeah.
So what are the buckets? I think you said there were 5 of them. So what are the 5 areas?
Before we do that, let me throw something in real quick. Yeah. And we were talking about the temperament, about the personality. the reason we like temperament is temperament gets down below personality, because personality is like a mask that you show. You know, it's like I call it like the persona we use on Facebook. I call it Facebook, because we present a persona because we want people to like us.
Right.
Yeah.
We want to present that image that everybody loves. We show the best meal we've ever eaten, the prettiest place we've ever been to,
Right.
all of that because we want folks to be attracted to us. Well, temperament kind of gets behind the mask. And you have to test to really get it accurate. You can't just, I can look at somebody and know they have a few certain traits, but there have been times I've been so wrong, it just blew me away. And then, Sheryl and I've tried, and we've done, like we said, we've done hundreds of these profiles and thousands of sessions trying to, help interpret this stuff with people, but you have to test. But temperament actually comes from the DNA from our parents. It's not like blue eyes or brown hair or whatever. It's that spiritual DNA that comes. Their feelings, their thoughts, all of that thing that they're inherited from your parents.
Generational curses.
Yeah, it can identify that as well. A lot of those things can really be tied with generational curses. Absolutely, but it's that DNA that we get from our parents, and so that temperament is where we are at our default, where we are at the beginning, where we are at our weaknesses, and we can default to those in our weaknesses.
Right.
And we can even default past our spiritual growth back to that default. But that temperament plus the life experiences create character. And then so temperament and character gives us our personality. And so it gets down below the personality. Okay. And so that's why we love this, is because sometimes it cuts. We say sometimes it cuts to the core. It kind of lets us know, hey, this is where you are. And that temperament doesn't change. It's who we are. It's who we're made.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Have you seen it? Like an average person, does it change over time, over their age, over aging or that kind of thing? I think you just answered.
No, it stays the same, but the experiences that you have can cause you to operate in a different way. Like if I know that I might have a tendency to be stubborn, which Sheryl is hoping I will change one of these days. I am a phlegmatic, and I'm stubborn. But the reason I'm stubborn is because I am one of the traits of the phlegmatic is that I will research it to death to make sure I make the right decision. So when I make the decision, it is the right decision. That kind of thing. To her, it looks like procrastination. Will he ever make a decision? Will he ever do it?
Right.
To me, it's like I gotta get this decision right, because the world on its axis depends on whether I get this decision right. And so
and then he says, "Blue. We're going with blue."
Okay, thank you. Finally,
but the temperament is you can grow, you can have spiritual maturity and grow past some of the weaknesses that you have. And you can also, we have folks that sometimes that come into us and they are not living in their real temperament. They're living and this happens a lot of times especially with women who maybe doesn't have a husband who's leading in the house.
Okay.
Yeah. And
they're having to hold the reins.
Yes.
Of the whole house, spiritually,
right?
Maybe physically, maybe paying the bills. They're having to hold the reins, and they weren't intended to hold the reins, and so as a result, they're in a terrible place. And so we're like, we got to get the husband in here, and we got to talk, and we got to help him try to understand it. He's got a role to play, and so she can relax a little bit. Sometimes single moms, bless their hearts, man, single mom. They will make it happen, whether they're supposed to be the kind of person to do it. They'll work 3 jobs. They'll do whatever they're going to do, but they're going to make sure the family's successful.
Right.
And so sometimes not living in your temperament can cause you to be frustrated. What looks like depression can really be a major amount of frustration and anxiety.
Wow.
I was just going to circle back to Troy's question, because there are the 5 areas. There's choleric. And we can give you just a little snippet because there's so much about a temperament. But choleric is what most people consider that type A person. They're the driven person. They're going to do whatever it takes.
Great leaders.
Great leaders. Then you have the melancholy, which gets a bad rap. I'm saying it because I are one.
Melancholy compulsive.
Yes, that's just in control. Pray for Tim. But the melancholy, gets that, they're just the Eeyore type. But your temperaments are your creative people. Intellectually, they are the ones who are your musicians, your writers.
Okay.
They are the ones who, painters. They're very into the arts, very mindful, very intellectual people if it's in their area of inclusion. Then you have the phlegmatic, as Tim was referring to. The phlegmatic is your peacemaker. The phlegmatic is your diplomat. They very much can come into a room and read the room. They know already something about you before they talk to you.
Got it.
Yeah.
And we're also pulling in what we've learned from the spiritual. Phlegmatics are...
There's a discernment factor.
From just what we've done in the profiles we've used, we have a lot of people we found who have a very prophetic gift if they are phlegmatic. Just part of what's tied there. Then there is the sanguine. Sanguine loves everybody and everybody loves sanguine. They're the people person, the sunshine people. Want to make everybody happy. And then there is the supine. That is the fifth temperament that was discovered. Supine is what I like to call the Reese cup of the temperaments because it's melancholy and sanguine smacked together.
Wow.
So you have a little bit of the melancholy tendencies and a little bit of the sanguine tendencies with it as well.
That's interesting, man.
Yeah.
So do you find anybody who's kind of almost equal across the board with all five present?
It's almost
Very
impossible
seldom.
to do all five.
Yeah.
You could do, because also to bring a twist to it, you can have a blend, but the only blend you can have is a phlegmatic. The phlegmatic will come and blend with the other temperaments, but no
That
other
makes
two
sense.
temperaments will blend.
That's interesting.
And
Yes.
then there's other components of it, of expressed and wanted. Like if phlegmatic came first and then supine came second, they express as a phlegmatic and they really want us a supine. And there's just so many blends to it, and it at times it can almost play with your head a little bit. You have to go, okay, let me think a little bit. Okay, all right. So I know why you're thinking this way, and this is the way you think. And I love when I get phlegmatics in the room because I know exactly what they're feeling, and I can go, I start talking. They'll go, why? Or how did you know all that? This is crazy. I'm not the only one that feels that way. Oh, cool. This is good. And so all of a sudden they're thinking, I'm not crazy. I haven't lost my mind, we laughed. Our pastor had taken the one what Tim LaHaye had done years ago.
Yes.
He had taken that test, and he was like, I'm just conflicted on this. This is me sometimes, but it's not me all the time, that kind of thing. And we did this one with him, and he goes, this is freeing. This is freeing because it breaks it up in different areas. And now I understand why I think the way I think. It's almost like you have a camera and you're turning the lens until it's clear.
Yeah.
And it brought clarity to him, and so it's a great tool to help us be able to get to people and to understand them, to understand themselves. Because when we understand ourselves, we have a little clarity more about our identity. And you guys, we've already mentioned this. One of the biggest things that folks are struggling with today,
yes, sir,
is identity.
Yes, absolutely.
I remember about 4 or 5 years ago, I Googled the most Google words, and one of the top Google words was identity. And the enemy is doing his best to steal people's identity, skew identity. I mean, one of the biggest things in the news recently was a marketing campaign where identity was thrown into it, and it was like, oh man, there was a revolt on that one, And so, we have to. I think this helps folks understand a little bit more about themselves, and then when we can work the word into it a little bit more and help them understand their spiritual identity, I think we're really making progress.
Wow.
So if you take this, the 5 different components or the 5 different temperaments, how do you use this in your practice, and how do you take that? How would you use my temperament to help me relate to my wife and her temperament?
Go for it.
Well, I'm going to give you some examples, because once you know your temperament and who you are, how you, sometimes just knowing that's why I respond that way when you say something to me. Example, melancholy. I can speak greatly to this, like Tim can to phlegmatic. If you approach me with something that might have not gone the way I expected it to, if he comes to me because something didn't work out how I wanted, he has learned, because of my temperament, I will take things very offensive. You can say something just straightforward. Here you go. That didn't work out. Already, I'm a failure because a melancholy doesn't feel good enough. We're perfectionists. We want everything top of the line. We have higher expectations for ourselves and for others. So it's real easy to be disappointed in myself and him. So I have to know, is that coming from my temperament or is it truly a situation, something didn't work out? So he has learned how to come to me and say, honey, I'm so sorry that didn't work out the way you wanted to. Have you thought about maybe looking at it this way? That doesn't sound like a rejection to me.
Right.
Yeah.
He's learned how to bring things to me because of my temperament that I won't feel I'm just not good enough.
Wow.
So knowing those things about each other's temperament, going back to the thing about his phlegmatic, talking about taking time to make a decision, that is something that very recently he did. And it saved us from being in a bad situation.
Yeah.
And I thanked him. I said, honey, I thank you that you were in tune. Thank you that you had a check in your spirit because you were waiting.
Right.
I did tell him, communicate to tell me that you had the check in your spirit.
Exactly right.
But that's what held him back from making a decision. And I know that he will do that. He will take longer. So knowing that, I'll just say, honey, if this is something we have to move on time-wise, remember we have a timeline. But I don't push daily.
Yeah.
I just have to put that out there for him.
So it sounds like communication, though, seems to be the little bridge between,
Absolutely.
to make it actually work.
That's right.
You know, being able to come to a particular level of communication.
Yeah. And, to tag on to what Sheryl was talking about with melancholies, words mean everything to a melancholy.
Yes.
What you say to them, they never forget. And so when you lash at a melancholy and you call them names or you say something to them, they can't forget those. It's hard for them to get past that. And healing is hard with a melancholy sometimes because they can take it to heart. First of all, they have a small group of friends.
Right.
They usually have a small core of friends that they're going to let into their world. And for you to get into that circle, they've got to hear trust and reliability, and for you to even get into that circle, it's like one of our clients said, it's got to be like an arrow shot at the bullseye. It's got to be straight. If they sense any fuzziness, if they sense any what we call in the vernacular BS, belief systems, that's what we're going there, okay? If they sense that the belief systems are not good, they don't let you in their world, And so a melancholy to let you in their world, they got to trust you. And if there's something that attacks them or something that they go, that's not quite right, you're not going to get in their world. And so they can shut you down very quickly. Very quickly. Yeah.
And Troy, to go back to your question, when you know your spouse's temperament, let's talk about affection. You could be on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
The thing is, you can know your spouse's love language, and we found that they fall into alignment with the temperament, which would make perfect sense for it to do that. You have to realize, I'm loving you the way, of course, I want to receive it. That's just natural.
Right.
But you have to know, and I think we talked about this last time, we don't use the word compromise. We use sacrifice.
Yeah.
Because that's what marriage is. You sacrifice for each other.
Right.
So you sacrifice what you might need to make sure that your spouse is getting what they need. And knowing to the core who they are And like Tim said, if words are important to your spouse, you're going to know how important it is to affirm them on a continual basis, and then vice versa for each other. We both are supine in affection. The thing about that is supine has a lot of great traits. One of the worst things, the weaknesses of the supine is you expect others to read your mind.
Wow.
So our affection, if we're not careful, can get cold because we're not communicating.
Right.
I'm expecting him to, well, how long have you been with me? You know me better than that. What are you thinking? Right?
Yeah.
But that's where exactly what you said, Bruce, communication.
Yeah.
No matter, knowing your temperament's great, but if you don't communicate about
Communicate it. Yeah.
then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It works for you because you know about yourself.
Sure.
But if you're not communicating and sharing those needs with each other, another area of the temperament, once we learned that, I found out that the phlegmatic part of Tim, and when I say isn't thoughtful, they don't always go beyond, I hate to say it, baby, I'm sorry, but it's true. Phlegmatics can be a little selfish.
They can.
It's just the way their minds work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're focused on other things. And so there would be times I would be like, come home, he hasn't done this. Why didn't you start this for me? You know, different little things that happens in every married life, right?
Right.
Why didn't you do that? You know me. You know when I come home, this has to be done.
Yeah.
And I used to do what Tim has mentioned before, the cabinet concerto with slamming cabinets to let him know I wasn't happy because I didn't want to talk about it, but I wanted him to know I wasn't happy.
So you didn't want to say it, but you wanted him to know.
Yes,
But you didn't
absolutely. Because remember, he should read my mind.
That's
He
right.
should know why I'm upset.
Right,
I shouldn't
right.
have to tell him.
And I'm so thankful for soft closed doors now.
Yes. But because I knew our temperament, I would think about it and go, Sheryl, if you ask him, will he do it? Of course he will.
Yeah.
You just have to communicate. And so it was, honey, can you come help me do this to get ready for dinner? Sure, honey. Give me 1 minute to finish what I'm doing and I'll be right there. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we get worked up over things that aren't even important.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas if you know the heart of your spouse, and that's with anybody, I don't care what your temperament is. If you know the heart of your spouse, and what Tim always tells our clients, assume positive intent.
That's a good way to look at it.
That's great.
His intent towards me is always going to be positive.
Yeah.
Did he maybe forget something? Did he maybe not do something the way I wanted him to? Sure, that can happen, and vice versa. I don't do everything the way he wants me to all the time either. But if we assume positive intent, then we communicate about it, we're good.
That's right.
Awesome.
And there are times when I'm frustrated at myself that I didn't think of. I wasn't thinking ahead enough to be able to help with that. Because we have a crazy schedule. I mean, we're counseling 3 nights a week, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, and we have counseled on Wednesday night before. And we try to push that back as much as we can so we can be involved in our own church. Mm-hmm. And, but sometimes I'm like, why didn't I do that ahead? I could have just done that. I was home. I could have done that for her, and it would have been easier. And I get angry at myself when she'll mention. I'm like, oh, I just But I keep telling her, I said, I ride the slow bus, but I do get there eventually. I promise. My heart's there. It just takes me a little while to get there, and so and then sometimes when she's discussing, I'm already there, and I'm sitting there waiting. Okay, she'll work through it, and she'll finally get to me. I'm there. But it's another subject within itself. But it's so good, to know these tendencies. Like I can actually pull up part of Troy's here. I've got Troy's profile here.
Oh, you already did yours. See, I'm sitting here the whole time I'm saying it would have been great if we had done it like you and I had done it, not you and I together, but
right.
for the podcast,
That would have been
and
cool.
so we may have to have y'all come back, man, and put us on the spot, man. Yeah. Well, please feel free to put Troy on the spot now.
I'm just going to pull a couple
knew we
of
were
things.
kindred spirits.
I'm just going to. Troy's like, oh my goodness. Put the knife down, Troy, please. No, just a couple of things I'm going to pull out of Troy's. I think it's good. Is like in his area of control. one of these things that says good leadership capabilities, especially
Absolutely.
if he's able to move in unknown areas at his own pace. Okay. So he's got the ability to lead, but he wants to be competent. He wants to be in control. He wants to know he's mastered the material before he walks into it. Mm-hmm. Pretty accurate?
That is pretty accurate.
Pretty accurate. And so, for instance, if Tisha is wanting Troy to make a decision before he has all the facts and he feels good about it, and she pushes him, what's he going to do? He's going to be either angry or he's going to dig his heels in and say, wait, I'm got to figure this thing out. I've got to feel like I'm in control of this. So if she knows that's a trait he has, she is very careful how she approaches and pushes him there.
And to make sure he has all the information and time to process.
Yeah. We need to make sure she gets a copy of this.
Okay. It's been a while since we went over this. It's been years ago since we did this. We probably need to do that. And here's another statement. Compulsively demands truth, order, reliability, and dependability from himself and others. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he holds himself at a high standard, sometimes a standard that he can't even reach. Mm-hmm. It angers him. Sometimes he's got his standard so high it makes him angry that I can't even reach my own standard. And then we got all these slackers out here walking around. They're clocking in at 7:59 and they clock out at 5 o'clock exactly. Right. He wants folks around him to go the extra mile.
Right.
Take their load. Don't be throwing it on my desk at the last minute. Right. And so knowing things like that, for a spouse, especially, I always tell melancholies they need to have a beach bum in their lives. Because they need to learn. They need to sometimes not hold their standard quite so high. Yeah. They need one or two of those people that live paycheck to paycheck. Surf's that dude, man. Let's go, man. Let's have a good time. Hang 10, all that junk, and so just to kind of lighten them up, because sometimes they can get a little heavy. Troy loves to laugh. That was one thing I would say about him. He loves to laugh. Right. But a lot of times the melancholies can get a little serious, and us phlegmatics, heaven help us. We're just like, flatline, like on the heart monitor, we can be flatline sometimes because all we're thinking about is the next nap we're going to get, that kind of thing, because our energy level is just not super strong, And so if you got like a sanguine out there, like if Sheryl was a sanguine and she wanted to go and do all kind of things, all kind of activities, and she's married to a phlegmatic, and I'm like, I'll go with you for a while, but we got to come home, soon, kind of thing. Yeah. She needs to know that. Yeah. And knowing that in your relationship, and I'll be honest with you, it plays into your kids too, because your kids, you will learn that you probably need to approach your kids a little differently sometimes. We as parents, we've been, one size fits all. You're going to do what I say, and that's going to be it. That kind of thing all the time. Sometimes that doesn't work with every kid. No, there's ways of discipline, and I grew from the old school. Hey man, you put the hand of correction on the seat of understanding, that kind of thing. Right. And sometimes that doesn't work as well with every kid. Right. We had two very different kids. Our first one came out, man, she was like bright eyes, looking around like, "Whoa, this is cool, man." Hey, And then the other one came out, and he was like, had this wrinkled face like, it's cold out here, man. Lights are bright. Put me back. And so, different, sometimes, I was a teacher for 20 years, and I wish I had known about this. I believe I would have treated kids different, in a different way of being able to reach them and getting, because the cool thing is when you got more tools, you can get more potential out of people. Yeah. Wow. That's true. And you want to motivate people. Sometimes everybody's not motivated the same way. If I know what your motivation is, I can get more out of you. Yeah. Yeah.
And if I can say real quick, sometimes we're talking about when people are opposites, how that looks. Well, sometimes you butt heads because you're the same.
Oh boy.
Good point.
So knowing that, we had a couple we worked with, and they were both melancholy and control. And they had a hard time making decisions. They weren't getting along well. And we went over the temperament, and the husband had the light bulb moment. And it was great because you saw it happen. Mm-hmm. And then he said, now I get it. I'm the same way. And if I talk to her about these things to myself, I would not receive it. Mm-hmm. So now I get it.
Wow.
He had to see it from that same point of view. And then he realized, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Now I know how she feels.
Yeah. How would I respond to the?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's good. That's awesome.
And that was I'll never forget that night. I remember where exactly he was sitting in the office, and the look on his face, it was priceless.
Wow.
But we were able to talk to him. Hey, look, think about this. So if you guys got aligned in direction, pulling together as opposed to butting heads, imagine the amount of things you could get accomplished as a couple. And I went on and used the example. I know you guys have probably seen this example of how oxen, when they're trained, of course, in a yoke, and they usually try to put them in, equal size oxen when they train them. Mm-hmm. And so that when one pulls, they pull the same way, because if one pulls stronger than the other, you don't go in a straight line,
right.
Kind of thing. And I used to know the figures, and I'm not sure if these are right, but it says, I think it's something like one oxen can pull like 2,000 pounds by themselves, like a ton by themselves. I believe it's right. And then two oxen together can pull like 10,000 pounds.
Wow.
Together. Kind of scriptural there. One puts
1,000
to fight, two would put
10,000
to fight. Kind of a scriptural parallel there. So when they get on the same page, especially if they're working together in a business or they're working together in a ministry,
right.
if they're on the same page, what can they accomplish?
Yeah, man.
When they get the same vision, the Bible's very clear. Without a vision, the people perish if they don't have a vision cast to go in a direction.
Yeah.
And so when they get that vision, hey, look, I'm not fighting against you. I'm fighting with you. We're together. We're pulling it together.
Wow.
So I'm looking at these three areas, and I don't know if you've ever been asked this before. So you have inclusion, control, and affection.
Yes.
Okay, and then you have the 5 buckets that kind of can be configured over those 3 areas. In any of those areas, is it beneficial for someone to have the same or be in the same bucket? If that makes sense. So is it beneficial in the area of control for both parties to be a phlegmatic, or in the area of affection, can both parties be melancholy? Mm-hmm. Is there any scenario where that's beneficial?
When you know your strengths, it's kind of like what Tim was talking about, and you're working together with that, it can so be beneficial, as long as you both know that.
Got it.
Otherwise, you do the butting of heads because you're not relating to each other. Or here's the thing, talk about the area of control if you're both melancholy. So you're both expecting perfectionism. You're both wanting it to be perfect. You're both wanting truth, order, reliability. As long as you both know that about each other, you're going to ride great together with all your decisions. Mm-hmm. But put it this way, say one of the spouse isn't spiritually where they should be or in sin.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have issues because they're going to want to dominate. Yeah. Because they don't bring with their temperament the submission of the Lord.
That's a good point.
Wow, that's great, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And to kind of go to that question and talk a little bit more, is it necessary? No. If it is, it's great. But remember, it's kind of like being married. If we were both the same, one of us would be unnecessary. Mm-hmm. I need some different outlook. I'm a phlegmatic. I can lead, I can organize, I can get things done. But I like to work shoulder to shoulder with somebody when I do a project, because I want to be able to keep bouncing ideas. What do you think about? What do you think about? How do you feel about this? Are we going in the right direction? And if I'm getting that affirmation, man, I am even pulling stronger. Yeah. And so that's just the way I work. Clerics, they're extreme strong leaders. They've got the thing is they're on the next project in their mind while they're working on the project they're in.
Yeah.
They're already past it. It's like, hey, if it's a pastor, he's on this campus, but he's already building the next. He's already got the plans already built. He's got the workers lined up to build the next campus. Yeah. He knows the colors. He knows the furniture. He's already got that in his mind. Amazing. Any kind of a leader, that's choleric. Sanguines and cholerics will look a lot alike in socially. Because they're both so bright and positive, and people want to be around them. The sanguines probably doesn't have the follow through the choleric does,
right?
But both folks are attracted to them. I mean, sanguines are, they're like, hey, all I want to do is, Sheryl Crow song, all I want to do is have some fun. Man, that's the sanguine, man. They're a party waiting to happen, And so, but they all of these have abilities to lead. Probably if there were any, the supine is going to lead from a servant's heart, from a servant leadership position, because they're a servant. They believe in, you'll see supines all over your organizations. You'll see them in your churches. They're the ones who show up and clean up, and nobody knows that they did it.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're not telling anybody that did it, or they'll show up and do something. I was in a church years ago when I first started teaching in South Georgia, and it was this beautiful little Assembly of God church, and it was one of those churches that if you saw something need to be done, you better jump on it and do it, because somebody else is going to beat you to it. Because it was just that church was, if I could probably test, that church was full of supines. Man. They'll get that stuff done. I mean, that church was the prettiest little church, inside, outside, grounds, everything perfect.
Wow.
Because there was always somebody showing up to do something. It wasn't always the same person. It's just so many different people.
And any differentiation noticeable between male female as far as the supines?
Honestly, no.
Melancholies?
It's a mixed bag.
It's just a mixed bag.
It truly is.
Interesting.
But sometimes, I'm glad you brought that up, because of a temperament and life experience,
okay,
it can make harder for men to sometimes be, if they are supine, to embrace being because they're more tenderhearted. They have a softer spirit to them. And in the world we live in, if you're a man with a softer spirit, then you're already labeled something you're not.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is how the enemy attacks your identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who you are.
That's really good. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I was in the arts for so many, many years, and and as a musician and as a director and conductor and all that. And, for years when I first started, folks could look at you kind of, why are you doing that? That's not what a guy does. And I was like, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I'm just as masculine as anybody else.
Right.
I want to shoot my guns, and I can bust wood just like the big guys. And I've worked hard. I've done construction work, and I've done all that. But that doesn't have anything to do with my identity.
Yeah.
My identity is totally separate from the creative side of me.
Right.
And so, but it's the enemy does its best to attack that portion of us, and we just have to say no. Just say no. We don't have to just because somebody throws a label on us. We don't have to be that.
Right.
Okay, so a question I have is there any correlation between these temperaments and mental illness that you guys have seen?
Yeah, one session that we did, Sheryl and I were actually in the session, and it was we were talking with the person, and they had been diagnosed ADD or ADHD. It was one of the two that they had been diagnosed early in their lives.
Okay.
And bipolar.
Oh, wow.
And we started doing the profiles and going over the things in the profiles. And they were looking like, do you think they may have gotten it wrong?
Wow.
And I'm like, it's possible. I said, I'm not a psychiatrist or I'm not an MD, but I do believe that some of the things that they were dealing with were just not knowing who they were, as opposed to all of the crazy things that people label medical community are quick to throw a label, and I love the medical community, so don't get me wrong. And there are a lot of them a lot smarter than I am, but sometimes I think we throw around labels and throw medicine at people sometimes when we don't need to do that.
Right.
And it was just like, so I feel this way looking at this profile, and I feel this way. Maybe they didn't get it right. And so, you know, sometimes we will actually send folks back to their doctor and say, why don't you have a conversation with them and talk to them on why they felt this way. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I think, you know, it's amazing how that a lot of Europeans don't even recognize the term ADD and ADHD that we throw on our kids all the time.
Right.
You know, sometimes I hate to say it, sometimes I think it's called bad parenting.
Wow.
You know, sometimes there's medication needed. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But sometimes I think it's called bad parenting.
Wow.
And if your child has a temperament where it's, okay, I have to go here and I have to go do this, and, I started to clean my room, but I didn't get it finished.
Yeah.
And I went and did this, and I just didn't get it finished. And so then they get labeled as something.
Right.
And it's their temperament. And when you learn it's their temperament, you learn
sense.
how to teach them to break things up.
Yes.
Don't give them so much at once to do because they're not going to be able to focus that long.
Right.
That doesn't mean they can't focus. Doesn't mean it's ADHD or ADD. It's their temperament. It's who God made them to be. It helps them learn how to break those things up. It'll help your kid learn how to study and do schoolwork.
I think this is phenomenal, the work that you guys do. And
absolutely,
you know, these tests. One question I do have, how would someone get the test? How would they?
Yeah, I want to know. Because I'm ready to take mine. So I'm going to make Robin take hers with me.
I know you already said you can't just go online and you know, but where would someone go, or how can they get in touch with you guys?
Right. We do these all the time, and sometimes folks will come to us just to do the temperament test. Mm-hmm. You know, and we love doing them because sometimes if it's a key that will open their eyes, we love seeing it happen. You know, those, like Sheryl was talking about, that aha moment, you know, happens. Oh, we love it.
So I was just going to say, give them our email address, and what will happen is you can contact us. We will have the test actually comes from the National Christian Counseling Association. That's who we're a part of.
Right. Okay.
They will send it to you, say, Dr. Tim would like for you to partake.
Yes.
You will take the test. They will let us know when the results are in, and then we schedule a time, and that's when we go over it.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's real simple. It's not a long survey. And when they do it, we want them to answer the questions quickly and as objectively as they can. Don't try to overthink. There's no right or wrong answers. It doesn't tell whether you're normal or abnormal. I mean, you know, folks will ask me what normal is, and I'll say it's a setting on the dryer. I wouldn't know normal. I am not normal, and I would not know normal when it walked in my office because I just don't know what that looks like. But answer them truthfully, and we can work from there, and so we can do that. We have an office here in Charlotte in the Steel Creek area. We love to do folks. In person more than we do. We can do this online, but we love to do them in person. And if you go to our website, www.judacarecenter.org, or you can call the office, 704-426-3206. You can look us up. We're on Psychology Today, and we're in the Google listings as well too. But you need someone who's certified to do this, to be able to interpret those results, because it's like we said, it's not a questionnaire that you can get out of a magazine or something. Right. And if you don't know how to interpret this, if I handed you that sheet and said, here, this is what it is, we would probably be spending months trying to undo the damage that you would probably try to read into it, and because you have to learn how to word these things, and you have to learn how to interpret these things, but they're easy to do, and we'd be glad to do those with folks if they have that desire to do that. And we've seen folks take the temperament profile, and then all of a sudden we're working on it. It starts, well, I want to work on this now. Can we work on this?
Right.
So that's cool too. We're glad to do that.
Wow.
Amazing content, amazing work.
Fantastic, man.
If you would tell them one more time how to get in touch with you.
That's Judah Care Center, www.judacarecenter.org. Our phone number is 704-426-3206. Please leave a message, because we're a smaller practice with 2 of us. And so if we're in sessions, we can't answer the phone. We're not at the point where we can pay somebody to answer the phone for us. So just leave a message and we'll try to get back to you as quickly as we can. So just be patient. We'll try to get back to you as soon as we can. Or you can email us, Sheryl@judicarecenter.org or Tim@judicarecenter.org. You can either email us too as well. And I tell you, women, if you need a great lady to work with you, the best one I know, I'm going to tell you.
I'll pay you later, baby.
Well, we'll make sure we add that information to the show notes.
Yep.
When we put this broadcast out. I really do want to take the opportunity to thank you guys for sharing this with us.
Yes.
I'm really hoping a lot of people contact you because I see this as being a very beneficial tool, if for nothing else, just to help you to understand yourself.
Yeah.
And how you
Absolutely.
tick.
Sure.
And I can see that as being beneficial to marriages. Pull that in. If you can understand yourself, you can understand how your spouse ticks. And I think it probably would eliminate a lot of pointless arguments.
Sure.
Sure. And help you grow together a little bit better. So thank you so much for taking your time. I'm Troy.
And Bruce.
We're glad that you joined us here under Victory.